What if I told you that one senator just stood on the Senate floor and called out the most powerful people in America by demanding that the government finally release the files connected to Jeffrey Epstein? And that in that same moment, another name quietly emerged behind the scenes: Pam Bondi, the Attorney General now accused of standing between the truth and the public's right to know. Inside the Senate chamber, for words carved above the Supreme Court suddenly came alive: equal justice under law. But what happened next revealed how fragile those words really are. Because when Senator Jeff Merkley called for transparency, the answer from Washington wasn't justice. It was silence. This wasn't a political stunt. It wasn't about scoring points on television. It was about whether justice in America still means anything when the crimes involve the rich, the famous, and the well-connected.
This particular case involving Jeffrey Epstein, every single one of us, all 100 senators, know that Jeffrey Epstein was a monster who groomed and abused underage children, a monster who trafficked girls to rich and powerful men, a monster who destroyed the lives of hundreds of young women. As I speak, the U.S. Department of Justice has files detailing the names of those connected to Mr. Jeffrey Epstein. It's been widely reported that in May, our Attorney General, Pam Bondi, informed President Trump that his name appears in the Epstein files. But to be clear, just because a name is listed in the Epstein files doesn't mean that that person was a collaborator in abusing young women. There may be lots of names in that file related to just casual acquaintances or people met on trips, who knows? But some of those names in that file may well shine light on people who abused young women. So let's bring it to light. If we believe in that vision of equal justice under law, if we believe in accountability for all, then release the files. Let the chips fall where they may. It is the right thing to do. Everyone involved in assisting Jeffrey Epstein in running an international trafficking organization, or involved in directly purchasing access to young women through Jeffrey Epstein, or directly abusing young women proffered by Jeffrey Epstein, every single person, let the chips fall where they may. No matter how rich the person is, no matter if they held office in the past, no matter if they aspire to office in the future or sit in office right now, no matter how famous or not famous they might be, let the chips fall where they may. That's the vision of equal justice under the law. Everyone involved in Mr. Epstein's crimes must be brought to light and must be held accountable. My colleague from Oregon, Senator Ron Wyden, and the Senate Finance Committee have been investigating Mr. Epstein's financial network for the last 3 years. The Biden administration fully cooperated with the Senate investigators on that case. The Finance Committee staff went to the Treasury Department to see the Epstein files and suspicious activity reports. Democrats understood that this was an ongoing investigation. We applauded the Biden administration for cooperating, and that was the right course. But now we're under a different administration. Instead of cooperating, the Trump administration is obstructing. The Trump administration and Attorney General Bondi are refusing to cooperate, and they are refusing to investigate further. They're simply saying 2 words: case closed. Case closed? When they have their hands on information potentially regarding dozens or hundreds of individuals who abused young women. So today we had a chance to vote on whether the case is closed. We had before us an amendment which said, deliver the files. Create the force of law, deliver the files. And 51 senators in this body, I am ashamed to say, said, hell no. We want them kept secret. We want to protect the perpetrators. Why? Because the man in the Oval Office, Mr. Trump, told us he wants us to protect those files, does not want them public. On July 17th, the Wall Street Journal reported on a letter allegedly written by Trump to Epstein as part of a birthday book for his 50th birthday in 2003. The letter is signed at the bottom, Donald. It features a drawing of a woman's body with very suggestive text. I debated putting that letter up. There's a chart of it in the door behind me, but it's already been made public. The public has seen it. I find it profoundly offensive letter. And as I passed by a stack of newspapers today, I saw a series of examples of Donald Trump's signature because Trump has said to the world, it's not my signature. But of course, the experts say that's not true. The birthday book contains another photo of Mr. Epstein holding an oversized novelty check from DJ Trump for $22,500. What is that check for? Underneath the photo, taken in the 1990s, a handwritten note says, quote, Jeffrey showing early talents with money and women. Sells fully depreciated, and then there's a name of a woman who's been blocked out to Donald Trump for $22,500. I don't know if a woman was sold to Donald Trump for $22,500. I don't know what it means to call a woman fully depreciated. I don't know if it was just kind of a brazen joke between
Merkley didn't whisper. He demanded. He said the Department of Justice holds files that contain the names of people linked to Epstein's international trafficking network, names of those who helped, those who paid, and those who looked away. He said plainly, let the chips fall where they may. For a brief moment, it felt like history was about to turn. The proposal was straightforward. Merkley drafted an amendment requiring the Attorney General to release the Epstein files to the public. The files would include travel logs, financial records, plea agreements, and any internal DOJ communications. Every document that could reveal how far Epstein's network really went. He was joined by his colleague Senator Ben Ray Lujan of New Mexico, a quiet co-pilot in the push for transparency. Together, they argued this wasn't about politics or revenge. It was about restoring faith in the principle that no one is above the law. And for once, it seemed possible. There was bipartisan buzz, pressure from survivor advocates, and growing public demand. The stage was set for a historic moment of accountability. But then came the wall. Pam Bondi's name appeared at the center of the resistance. As Attorney General, she controlled access to the Department of Justice records that senators said could expose not just Epstein's accomplices, but the powerful network that enabled him. Merkley claimed that under previous leadership, investigators had been allowed to review those documents and follow the financial trail. But under Bondi's watch, that door slammed shut. The official message was just 2 words, case closed. To Merkley, that phrase felt like betrayal. How? He asked. Can a case be closed when the victims are still waiting for justice? The answer never came. Inside the chamber, Merkley delivered one of the most striking speeches of his career. He reminded his colleagues of what those 4 words on the Supreme Court facade are supposed to mean. Equal justice under law, no exceptions for money, fame, or power. He painted the picture plainly. Epstein was a predator who exploited and destroyed the lives of young women. The Justice Department, he said, knows the names of those connected to him. Some may be innocent, mere acquaintances or business contacts. But others, he warned, may not be. And the only way to tell the difference is sunlight. That was the heart of his plea. Release the files. Redact the names of victims. Protect active investigations. But show the rest. Because if the system truly believes in accountability, hiding the evidence only protects the guilty. Then came the vote. 51 senators said no. No to transparency. No to accountability. No to letting the public see what their government knows. Merkley stood there, disappointed but not surprised. He said, "We had a chance to do the right thing today, and we failed." The irony was impossible to miss. For years, politicians have claimed to want the truth about Epstein. But when the chance arrived, most chose secrecy. The excuse? The same ones we've heard for decades: privacy, security, ongoing investigations. But the bill already covered those concerns. Victim names would remain sealed. Active cases protected. The only thing that would see daylight were the facts. Facts, it seems, are what frighten people most. At TO understand why. We need to talk about what's inside those files. They aren't rumors. They're not social media speculation. They're formal government records, flight manifests, bank transfers, grand jury summaries, plea deals, immunity agreements, and years of correspondence inside the Department of Justice. These records form a map. They show who traveled where, who paid for what, and who made decisions that allowed Epstein to keep operating long after the first warnings were raised. Some of the names in those documents might be unremarkable: pilots, assistants, accountants. Others, however, could expose connections that stretch across business, politics, and international influence. That's why transparency matters. Because without it, survivors remain in the dark, journalists can't follow leads, and the public is left with whispers instead of evidence. And when institutions choose secrecy over truth, conspiracy theories rush in to fill the void. Pam Bondi, for her part, insists that withholding the files is necessary to protect national security and ongoing investigations. But Merkley and his allies argue the opposite, that silence only deepens suspicion. He pointed out that the same department once worked hand-in-hand with Senate investigators to trace Epstein's financial network. Treasury Department officials provided access to suspicious activity reports. Staff followed the money. There was progress. Then Bondi's office said, "Stop." From that moment, nothing moved. The public heard the words "case closed." But for survivors, it felt like justice denied. That's why Merkley's amendment struck such a nerve. It wasn't just about one case. It was about the entire system. Across the country, advocates for trafficking survivors watched the vote with disbelief. For them, this wasn't an abstract debate. It was another reminder that even in the spotlight, power protects power. One survivor told reporters, "Every time they seal another file, it's like they're sealing my story inside it." That line echoed online, across forums and comment threads. People began asking, if transparency is so dangerous, what exactly are we protecting? And that's the question Pam Bondi couldn't escape. Critics accused her of prioritizing reputations over justice, shielding elites instead of empowering survivors. Supporters claimed she was simply following legal boundaries. But as the days passed, one thing became clear. The fight over the Epstein files had become a test of moral courage. Merkley kept pushing. He reminded colleagues that releasing the records would not expose victims. It would expose the powerful who used their influence to stay hidden. His amendment explicitly said that no record could be withheld because of embarrassment, reputational harm, or political sensitivity. The only names that would remain confidential were those of the victims and witnesses who requested privacy. Everything else, open the books. He even read from the amendment: "No record shall be withheld, delayed, or redacted on the basis of embarrassment, reputational harm, or political sensitivity." You could feel the room tighten, because everyone in that chamber knew what those words implied. When justice threatens comfort, comfort usually wins. But outside the chamber, something shifted. The public began paying attention again. Social media lit up with calls for transparency. Survivor networks gained new supporters. Independent journalists revisited old court documents. connecting patterns that had long been ignored. The pressure grew, and with it came renewed questions about how deep this story goes. Because if an administration can declare a case closed while evidence still sits sealed, what message does that send? That wealth and proximity to power can erase accountability? Merkley warned that secrecy doesn't protect justice, it poisons it. And he's right. Every hidden document chips away at trust. Every unanswered question strengthens doubt. Equal justice under law means nothing if the law bows to influence. That's why this story matters beyond Epstein, beyond Bondi, beyond Washington. It's about the foundation of faith in institutions. When citizens start to believe that the system hides the truth to protect itself, democracy suffers. Because justice depends on sunlight. Transparency isn't chaos, it's confidence. It tells people their leaders have nothing to hide. It tells victims their voices matter. It tells future predators that power won't protect them next time. Pam Bondi may have said the files must remain sealed for now, but Senator Merkley made it clear this fight isn't over. He vowed to bring the amendment back, to rally colleagues, to keep pushing until every file, every flight log, every financial trail is brought into the open, carefully, responsibly, but completely. He said, "We cannot allow secrecy to be the final word, because secrecy breeds impunity." Think about what that means. If even one case like this remains buried, how many others will follow? How many victims will stay silent, convinced that truth only matters until it embarrasses someone powerful? Releasing the files won't undo the past, but it can prevent history from repeating itself. It can show future generations that transparency is not optional, it's the price of justice. And maybe that's why Merkley's words struck such a chord, because he wasn't just talking to senators. He was talking to all of us. He said, "We had a chance to do the right thing. We failed, but we can fix it." Those words turned into a challenge. If you're watching this and wondering what you can do, don't underestimate your voice. Call your representatives. Email your senators. Tell them you support releasing the Epstein-related records, with redactions only for victim privacy and active investigations. Your message doesn't need to be long. Just say, transparency is not optional. Accountability matters. Because history shows that when enough people demand sunlight, even the most powerful can't keep the curtain closed forever. Every time you talk about this issue, share an article, or comment online, you remind the people in power that silence won't last. And if you think one voice doesn't make a difference, remember, every major investigation that ever broke open started because someone refused to stop asking questions that in the end, this isn't about left or right. It's about right and wrong. Pam Bondi represents the shield of secrecy. Jeff Merkley represents the push for light. Between them stands a nation trying to decide which side it's on. Do we accept that justice can be selective? Or do we finally insist that equal justice under law means what it says? The answer will shape more than this case. It will shape the kind of country we become. Because light doesn't just expose darkness, it rebuilds trust. And right now, trust is the one thing America can't afford to lose. So share this video to spread awareness. Subscribe for future deep dives as we track every new development. Leave a comment below. Should Congress force the release of the Epstein files, or keep them sealed in the name of privacy? Your opinion matters because democracy isn't a spectator sport. The truth only wins when people refuse to look away. Stay curious, stay loud, and never forget, light only scares those who have something to hide.